2003 Toyota Highlander, rear brake pads and machine rotors. I'm Brian Eslick from How to Automotive, and I'm going to walk you through that process. Okay, to get started, what we need to do is remove the brake caliper and the bracket. And the first thing we're going to do is right here on the brake hose, there's a little, it has a little ear here. We're going to take the 12mm bolt off here. And then down below here, we're going to remove the 17mm bolt with the pin in there. Now that that's unbolted, now you're going to flip your caliper upwards, like so, and you're going to push it in towards the inside of the car. You may have to wiggle it a little bit. What you're doing is you're sliding this pin off here. Once you get it off, then you're just going to kind of set it up here on top of the suspension or the backing plate here. And then on the back of this, we're going to remove this caliper bracket here. And there's going to be two 14mm bolts. So you're going to remove the one here on the bottom and then remove the one here on the top just behind the pin. So now that we got the bracket off, you want to make sure your park brake is not engaged, and we need to get this rotor off, and most likely it's going to be kind of stuck to the hub here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a 8 by 125 bolt. The rotor, there's going to be a couple little bolt holes, and you'll screw them in. Then you take a little electric gun or impact gun or air ratchet, or just a ratchet, whatever you got. And you run it in like that, and it'll pull the rotor off. Now that we got our rotor off, we need to inspect our park brake shoes and make sure that they're in good shape. They're not really a wearable item unless you accidentally leave the brakes on, so they're normally thin like this. They're not very thick. They're just kind of hold the car from rolling, so that's all you need. So just make sure all the hardware's there. There's no hydraulics or anything on it, it's all mechanical, so you just make sure everything is there and in good shape. And once that's, once you know that's in good shape, now you can take your rotor to your brake lathe. So I've already done a brake inspection on this vehicle and determined that my rotors are thick enough. That's one thing you may have to do. So you need to measure your rotor to make sure they're thick enough to machine. And if they're not thick enough, then you would replace the rotor. And if you don't have a brake lathe, you're doing this at home, you could take your rotor down to a repair shop and tell them the year, make, model of the vehicle, and they can measure it out for you. And if it's thick enough, they can machine it for you, and they'll charge you a small fee. So you're going to chuck your rotor up into the brake lathe. Once you got that going, go ahead and put a light cut on it and machine the rotor off. Now that we got our brake rotor machined here, we need to reinstall it and check our park brake adjustment. So if you look where these holes are right here on the spindles, or on the hub here, there's a little hole on the rotor, and you need to line it up where you can see all the way through it. So if you have it flip 180 out, it'll be blocked. So you want to make it where you can see through, because you're going to use a screwdriver and go through here. And on the inside there's a little adjuster wheel in here, and that you can adjust the park brake if you need to. So like what you want to do is you want to rotate your rotor, and you want to feel a light drag on the rotor. If it's too loose like that, then you need to adjust your park brake. And also when you pull the handle, if the handle comes up really high, that means you need to adjust your park brake. So you can adjust it through the hole, or it might actually be easier is to slide the rotor off and then adjust the little star wheel here with your fingers, a couple clicks, and then reinstall the rotor and check the drag. And I found it easier to adjust it with my finger like that, a couple clicks, and then try the rotor again. So after getting the rotor machined and the park brake adjusted, now we need to turn our focus to the caliper bracket and get that cleaned up. So you're going to take your bracket here, and you're going to remove the old pads and set them aside. And then mine came with new hardware, so I'm going to go ahead and take these clips off of my fingers here, and then transfer the new hardware on to just press on. If yours did not come with that, then what I recommend you do is take a wire brush like this, and you can clean the channels out and make sure that they're in good shape. If they're not in good shape, or if they look like they are damaged or any way, I recommend getting you a set of these. A lot of the brake pads nowadays come with it. And so go ahead and transfer those. Now that our hardware is transferred over, we need to take our pins, if they're rusty or gummed up or whatever, we need to clean them up. And what I like to use is a little grease and put them on there and work the grease on there. And make sure the pins are nice and lubed. And then the bolt that we took off on the bottom, it's the pin for the lower side here that screws in here. So you can go ahead and put a little lube on this here. And then once you get that done, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of the same lube. It's called Seal Glide, and it's specially designed lubricant for brakes. And a lot of times, sometimes the brake pads themselves will come up with a little packet of it, and you won't have to buy it. But if not, the packet may look like this right here. It's called Molly grease. So you would use this grease, and you would put a little bit on the pins here, and you would put a little bit on the back of the shims. So I put a thin layer on all the shims, and I rub it in really good, and that helps prevent vibrations and squeaks. You want to make sure you don't get any on the brake pad side. And if yours did not come with the shims, your new pads, then you need to transfer over the old shims from the old pads onto the new one. And also, it's going to have these little clips that they help. Well, actually, what they do is they kind of push the pad up in there so they don't vibrate and rattle inside the bracket. So you need to transfer this clip over to the new pad, and they just kind of, you could take them off with your thumb, or you may want to use a little pocket screwdriver or whatever to take them off, and then transfer over. So now we're ready to reinstall our caliper bracket back on. But before we do, I want to put a little of this blue thread sealer Loctite on the threads of the bolts. That helps prevent the bolts from vibrating loose and backing off. So once you get this caliper bracket back on, you can go ahead and torque these bolts here and here down to 43 foot-pounds. So now that our caliper bracket's remounted, we need to press the piston back into the bore of the caliper. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to lower the vehicle down first and remove a little bit of a couple ounces of brake fluid from the master cylinder. And the reason why is we're going to push this piston in, and it's going to push the brake fluid back in up the line, because we're not going to open the bleeder screw. We're going to leave the bleeder screw closed. So that's going to put brake fluid back up the line, and it'll push some of the brake fluid back into the master cylinder. And if it's too full, it'll overflow. And then after we're done with reassembling the brakes, what we're going to do is we're going to pump the brake pedal, and that'll pump the brake fluid back into the caliper, and we'll have a nice firm brake pedal, and we won't have to bleed the brakes. But I always like to recommend, like, if you do this and there is a spongy feeling to your brake pedal, then I recommend you bleed it. But most of the time you will never. I've actually done this thousands of times and never had to actually bleed the brakes after doing it this way. So what I'm using here is a C-clamp, and I'm going to take the C-clamp and use one of the old pads, put it in there, and I'm going to just rotate the clamp, and that's just going to push the piston back into the bore. So you'll want to suck a couple ounces out of your master cylinder, and use like a turkey baster, or I have like a special tool here to kind of you pump it and it sucks the fluid out. If you don't have that, a turkey baster works great, or like those little things you use to get the boogers out of a kid's nose. Those work good too. Just suck a couple ounces out, and so when we press the piston in on the caliper, it doesn't overflow the master cylinder and spill into the bay. Now we need to reinstall our new brake pads, and they have this little spring on the top. So you're going to put it in there and just kind of have to push upwards a little bit, and then you can slide the bottom in. Now we're going to take our caliper and put it back on. But when we do this, we want to make sure that our brake hose is not twisted. And we're going to slip it over the slide pin like this, pull it towards you, and rotate it downwards. And then the boot right here, you want to make sure you kind of push the boot in. And you want to make sure you lube this pin. I think I mentioned it earlier, but just in case I didn't. And then also take a little tiny bit of this blue Loctite or thread sealer, and put a little dab on the threads here. Now we're going to take the pin, slide it back through our caliper here, and then tighten this bolt up to 25 foot-pounds. After you tighten the lower caliper slide pin bolt, after the caliper's all bolted up, you also want to re-secure your brake line here with the 12mm bolt. And go ahead and torque that down. Now what you can do is put your wheels on, torque your wheels down to 76 foot-pounds, and then you're going to pump the brake pedals like I told you, and that'll complete the rear brake pads and machine rotors on a 2003 Toyota Highlander. I'm Brian Eslick from How To Automotive, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos and encourage you to subscribe for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again.